She is mouthy, she is outspoken, and yes, she is rich. My guest today is Susan Hyatt. This is an amazing conversation with one of my earliest mentors in the coaching industry. Let's dive in. So here's the question. In a world where the rules of business have been written by men, how do women entrepreneurs like us, women who want to make millions of dollars and impact millions of lives, how do we create enormous success on our terms? That's the question, and this show explores the answers. Welcome to Power Presence Position. I'm your host, Eleanor Beaton, and I'm on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who generate over $1 million per year in annual revenue. I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and leadership coach. I'm a wife, mom of 2 boys, and I'm the CEO of a 7-figure business. Stick around because on this show, you'll learn how to think, communicate, and get paid like a 7-figure CEO. Let's go. Hello, my fierce friends. Eleanor Beaton here. Welcome back to Power Presence Position. This is episode number 430. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're at episode number 430. I'm so excited for today's conversation with Susan Hyatt. I'll tell you about Susan Hyatt in a moment. Just go follow her. Do yourself a favor. Susan, actually, I first met her when I was back in 2014, where I was first getting certified as a coach. And she was one of my earliest mentors and teachers. And for me, I am the kind of learner where it's really important for me to be able to see somebody who's doing what I want to do. And so basically what I'll do is kind of get to know that person, be around that person, invest to work with that person. And I learn a tremendous amount through osmosis. But most importantly, I learn a lot about what's possible. And so I think Susan Hyatt is an amazing teacher, an example of what's possible, and a powerful teacher in the art of fun and pleasure and how this helps us to be better leaders and more successful. You know, I can remember Annette Verschuren, and of course, Annette Verschuren was the CEO of Home Depot Canada and Asia, who took Home Depot Canada from about $650 million to $6 billion in sales, and a former client. I'm so proud to share. But I remember Annette talking to me about how fun is such an underrated sort of skill or value for leaders. And that when you can have fun together, and when you can be fun and create fun and make fun, it's really, really powerful as a leadership tool and a business growth tool. Well, you know, Susan has a lot to say about that. We'll be talking about that in our interview. But before I get there, I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners, Virginia. Thank you so much. Who gave us a full 5-star rating on iTunes. She calls it inspiring leadership. Eleanor is articulate and to the point with her guidance on women in business. She's relatable, and I often listen to the episodes more than once because each one is packed with value. I highly recommend you subscribe and listen on the regular. In fact, don't only listen, but take the time to implement her suggestions in your business. You won't be disappointed. Thank you so much, Virginia, for that review. I so appreciate it. If you're a listener to Power Presence Position, would you do me the favor of taking 5 minutes to leave me a review on iTunes? It really helps get this free content out into the hands of as many people as possible. All right. So let's talk about Susan Hyatt. We'll be talking with Susan Hyatt in a moment, but we're going to talk about Susan Hyatt. Her number one passion is helping you get more of whatever you want. More money, more confidence, more energy, more joy, more free time. Susan's been featured on national TV and in magazines like O, the Oprah magazine, Cosmo, 17, and Women's World. She has spoken at the country's largest TEDx conference, where she spoke to a sold-out arena about why women need to stop obsessing about their weight and instead focus on earning money, gaining power, smashing the patriarchy, and running the world. She's a multi-passionate, creative, and self-made millionaire. She's the CEO of 3 companies. She hosts Go Time TV, the Rich Club podcast, and she's the author of the #1 best-selling book, Bare, a book that has inspired thousands of women to stop shrinking their bodies and start expanding their lives. And I included Bare. I gave away a box of books last year. It was super fun. And I included Bare in that box because I really loved that book. All right. So without further ado, you're about to have a ton of fun. I was really raring to go for this interview. You can tell, you'll hear it in my voice as soon as we switch over to that. But I hope you enjoy. Leave us a review. Here's Susan Hyatt. Susan Hyatt, welcome to Power, Presence, Position.
I'm so excited to be here, Eleanor. Thank you for inviting me.
So I have told my listeners, everybody I know, like you have no idea how many people I have been like, you need to go check out Susan Hyatt. Like the moment I sense that they need this level of unleashing, like that they need to kind of channel their inner bold. Mm-hmm. So my question for you is like, have you always been a badass like this? Have you always had this level of exuberance and astounding, ridiculous boldness?
This is so funny. Well, I would tell you no, except my mom sent me a bunch of like a bag of old photos from my childhood. And I'm flipping through these photos and I'm like, oh, like there she is. I lost it. I did sort of naturally. I was this scrappy, mouthy, fight the status quo kind of kid. And I would say I lost her, which is why I'm so passionate about helping women unleash, as you put it. Gosh, probably around 18-ish, I sort of lost a little bit of that confidence in college. But what we know is that girls between the ages of 8 and 14, their confidence declines 30% more than boys. And so I would say, looking back, where other people would say, no, people I went to grade school with and high school with would say, she was always this way. But it really was just, I was really toned down, even though they would say I wasn't. I was toned down quite a bit.
Well, and it's so interesting. I have done a lot of research and I'm doing work on my own book, which is called Why Women Don't Want Power. And it's really an exploration of how conflicted we are, with our own power. And I think that boldness is such an expression of that, It's almost like, how do we survive early adulthood with our boldness and our power intact? Now, I know you've done a lot of work around this. I mean, this was actually, I saw this as a major theme in one of your books, Bare, continuing to talk through that. But what's your sense? Why do we lose that boldness? And what have you uncovered about how to get it back?
So I think that girls and women are taught to fear power and taught that our power is only through manipulation. And over time, through all of time, women, there are many authors that refer to it as the witch wound, that if a woman dared to own her power and claim her power, literally killed, stoned, burned at the stake. And so it lives in our cells, this generational fear of being too much. And so when, especially in my Bare work, and when we're looking at what social media, the media, messages from culture at large that have been passed down, it's all around, who do you think you are? And if a woman is powerful, does claim her power, does use her voice, does own her sexuality, strive for political power, economic power, and social justice, how dare she? And let's knock her off that pedestal. And it's there's so much research that shows that a woman who becomes, whether it's through poetry or music or business or politics, if she gets too big for her britches, as my mama used to say, we're going to knock her off that pedestal. It's this ongoing cycle of build her up, knock her down. She can't get too big. We won't tolerate that. And so I think women are afraid of that.
Well, it's interesting because, when you look at one of the things that I learned as I was doing research into, women in power, is when you look at, powerful women elected officials and
Mm-hmm.
powerful women leaders, they're so often characterized as Medusa. And of course, what happened to Medusa? She gets her head cut off.
Mm-hmm.
We look at, depictions of powerful women who spoke up in like ancient Greek and Roman art,
Mm-hmm.
and powerful women who spoke up had their tongues ripped out. Like horrible things would befall them. Now, one of the things anybody who knows you and your work knows, you do not hold back from expressing bold opinions. Like it's the opposite, you
Right.
just have to look and you're like, you know what, my opinion, I need to get out there. Like
Yeah.
this is so inspiring. But have you experienced that, the sort of social silencing or the attempt to kind of social silence? Have you experienced this before?
Oh my gosh, yes. The story that like amuses me the most is in 2015, Mike Pence was my governor in the state of Indiana. And Mike Pence was championing this Religious Freedom Act, which basically in Indiana would have allowed business owners the right to deny services to anyone that they said offended their religious beliefs. So the LGBTQIA plus community, basically. And I came out hard on social media about this. And so the local news station, I think, ran a story about it. And the newspaper then copied their story onto their Facebook page. And there were local people just piling on that thread about like, who is this woman and who does she think she is? And this is wrong. And this is everything that's wrong with America. And we're organizing a protest outside my home that they were all planning to do this protest. And so, of course, there were people tagging me in this thread, and I went over there and I was making a bunch of jokes, and my kids my son couldn't have been more delighted. He had all his friends with like Nerf super soakers and lawn chairs ready. My kids were like, please let this happen. And, here's the thing is I went on there and tried to say, first of all, you can't take pictures off of my Facebook profile. Those are copyright protected. A photographer took those photos of me, so stop. And then secondly, you want to protest my right to express my views? Like, come on. They kept going. It was awful, awful, awful. Do you know what stopped them?
What?
My husband going on the thread and saying, how dare you attack my wife? They stopped because a man stepped in and said, this is wrong. And then they just kind of dispersed and got quiet. And to me, it was like the most ridiculous of all ridiculousness that I didn't ask him to jump in. And then I was kind of mad that he did. But I'm like, so a man says this is wrong. And you guys are all like, oh, okay, we'll quiet down, because he's a nice, upstanding guy. But yeah, that's kind of a dramatic example, but it happens in microaggressions every single day, with mansplaining and with oh, don't worry your pretty little head. Even I don't profess to be an expert in politics, but I do have a degree in political science. And, when I express my views politically, these guys wanting to oh, that's not how the Electoral College works. Oh, really?
I want to educate you.
Right. What? And it's just like a daily thing. And it happens with women as well.
Do you find that more hurtful? Is there a difference?
I find it easier to be amused by the men, with men, it's more like, oh, go ahead and underestimate me. That's cute. With women, it is more hurtful because it's like, hey, I'm championing your right to do what you want and be who you are. And it's frustrating.
Yeah.
When it does come from women.
One of the things that fascinates me so much about you and your story, and why I find, what you share and your message so instructive, is that, if we go back to sort of that time when you decided to get into this field of coaching, so you were a real estate agent, you were very successful in this field. I don't think you were probably ever a shrinking violet, but not the way that you are now. Can you take us back to this time in your life when you decided, hey, it's time to make a change?
Yeah. There were a couple of moments that always stand out in my mind. And And it's real estate. I have a lot of love for that industry for a lot of different reasons. My 22-year-old is now a residential realtor. And I told him, I'm like, I don't know that my central nervous system can handle your stories, because he comes over almost every day asking my advice on these deals. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't. But I remember my kids being really little and strapped into their car seats in the second row of my giant SUV. And my real estate signs in the back were like rattling, and I'm racing. They've got their little after school snacks and sippy cups. And I'm on remember Blackberries?
Yes.
Like I was on my Blackberry.
Fancy.
Fighting with another realtor about a termite inspection. And I remember looking at their little faces in the rearview mirror and thinking like, this is not how I want them to remember their mom. And then there was another moment where I had promised my mom when she was coming to visit that I wasn't going to work. And it was a holiday weekend, and I had some out of town clients just come in town unannounced and say that they wanted to make an offer on a house I had shown them like a month prior. And it was the biggest real estate sale to that point of my career. And I remember feeling like I couldn't say no, and that I felt the epitome of golden handcuffs in that situation. And I went and I closed the deal, and I came home and just fell apart in my kitchen. And I remember my mom being like, I don't know what's happened to my daughter. Like, you're not you anymore. And so it were those few moments that were very close together that I started to realize that even though I'm really good at something, I don't want to be doing this. And what is it that I would rather do that's much more aligned with who I am?
It's interesting, those moments where you have this experience where everything is like, there's a lot of external factors that could keep you where you are, but there's this internal compass that is saying, you've got to make a change. And it's all about what happens in that moment. Do you listen to it? Do you obey it? Do you obey it yourself, or do you not? When you look back to that time, because ultimately, I mean, you were very successful as a real estate agent, and you left that. What happened, and why did you take those? Like, what was it that allowed you to pursue something so different?
So I honestly credit Martha Beck's book, Finding Your Own North Star, because I would read that book and just weep into the pages. Like I would sit in my bathtub.
That book got a lot of people.
Fill it out and just weep. And my life started to get better. And I remember thinking, there is something to this. And what allowed me to do it, I really think I had enough of a glimmer within me to know that there had to be, I joke that Oprah raised me after school. And I always thought, oh, these people that she's featuring that are so passionate about what they do, I just didn't get that thing. Like I'm sort of good at a lot of things, but there's no real standout for me. And like kind of resigned myself to that. And I remember though thinking like, well, maybe that's not true. Reading that book, maybe everybody has something. And there was enough of that in me that I started down this path of just practicing different things, like getting up a little bit earlier, being quiet a little bit in the morning, journaling, moving my body. I started doing little things and started feeling better. And it was as if the clouds parted for me. There was this moment where I remember hearing myself say, this is what you should be doing, this stuff. And I decided to train as a coach. And that was it. That training changed my life and my entire family's lives, because I, at that point, decided that this was it. Like I was going to transition out of this career and I was going to become this thing called a life coach that no one where I lived had ever heard of, including my husband. And I was going to do it. Like I was going to do the damn thing. And some of that I can't take credit for. It was this moment of knowing that I think I was able to access because I had done some of the stuff from the book.
And what year was that? Do you remember?
'06 was when I read the book, and April of '07 was when I trained.
So when I met you, guys, as you probably can tell, I know a lot about Susan. So when I met you, it was 2014. Right. And so I was doing my training, and Susan was like a guest master trainer as part of Martha Beck's program at that time. And I can remember, coming on the call, I'm like, who's this Susan Hyatt? And I look you up and I'm like, dang, and it was one of these great moments where you're like, oh, this is what a coach can be. Like, oh, this is, so it was amazing. It was very, very cool. You were an awesome instructor.
Thank you. I love teaching.
I can tell you're really good at it. So at that time, it's 2014. So you're doing some coaching there. You had a successful business. I think you may have already been featured by Oprah, or there was that kind of stuff was happening around that time.
Yep.
So let's talk about your coaching career here for a moment, because I want to talk about your certification program that you have that I think people should go check out.
Thank you.
But how did you find your path as a coach? Like, how did you find your brand, and how did you unlock your way? Like, what has been the North Star that's guided your career?
Ooh, such a good question.
Know, right?
So when I started as a coach, we weren't active on social media like we are. Like 07, think about 07. We were on MySpace, right? By the way, my MySpace song was Life is a Highway by Rascal Flatts. But so we were on MySpace, and they weren't letting us old people on the Facebook in 07. It might have been 07 when they did start letting us on, but we weren't. So there wasn't a way for us coaches to congregate and see what other coaches were doing. And so my first year in business, I really took everything. That's why I have a lot of love for the real estate industry. I took everything I had learned from promoting oneself that I learned in real estate and applied that to coaching, because I don't know if y'all are realtors listening or know any realtors, but realtors, they are out there shaking the bushes.
They sure do. It's impressive.
It is impressive. They are out there. I mean, my 22-year-old, like I said, he posted some awful joke. I'm like, take that down. But it basically said like, hey, if you feel like you need to leave the country because of the election, I'll sell your house. And I was like, Ryan Hyatt. But that is the attitude. I mean, they are go time. And so that actually helped me quite a bit.
Yeah.
I use a lot of old school, local, in your own hometown type things to create a business, and then started learning online marketing techniques. I will tell you, so I started very generically, very much like, you want to have a better life, I will help you. And did pretty well with that. But my brand evolved from standing on Martha Beck's shoulders, if you will, using her intellectual property that I was certified to do as a Martha Beck coach, to figuring out, what did I really think? Where did I see the gaps happening? And I also went through we are all continuing to be on our personal journey and learning and growing and expanding. And I added weight loss coaching to my repertoire, and found through that I didn't really care about weight loss. What I cared about was a woman learning to love the skin that she was in. And that's where Bear was born. That I noticed that the best work that I was doing with women in that realm was really helping them stop weighing themselves, stop weighing their food, stop caring about the size of their jeans and shrinking their butts and expanding their lives, learning how to expand their lives. And so my brand got sassier and sassier, if you will, because in the beginning, I was just trying to be a good life coach. Yeah. Like, here's how a good life coach dresses and talks and behaves. And what I started to realize was that I really didn't want to be Byron Katie. Like, I love her, but I really I'm a Taurus. I like having my earthly pleasures. I am not a minimalist. I am a maximalist.
Everything extra. Everything extra.
#extra. And so when I really started leaning into like, you know what, I'm going to talk how I talk, and I'm going to dress how I want to dress, and I'm just going to be delighted my brand started to really sizzle and reflect and sizzle. And what I mean by that is reflect who I really am and the problems I really want to solve. So my evolution as a brand and as a business went from just trying to get it off the ground. And I was similarly in real estate, very buttoned up, to really embracing my wild mouth.
Well, I remember you telling us, look, in the beginning, coach your face off. That's literally what you said. And you're like, you have to learn, like you have to find out what you like and what you think and what you're good at and what you're interested in. This is interesting to me too, this idea of getting sassier and sassier, getting more of yourself. So what I'm hearing is really, it's like the evolution of your brand and the evolution of your practice was something that was actually much more internal, like it was oriented internally more than this external strategic, where's the market going,
Right.
Could you speak to that a little bit? Did I hear, tell me where I'm wrong.
Say more. So thank you. Coach your face off is one of my favorite things to still say,
right?
Because it drives me bonkers in the industry when marketing consultants, they're not wrong that you need to narrow and name your thing and not be all over the place. But often new coaches don't know. They are in no place to make that decision because they have to coach their face off and get the experience and figure it out. But yeah, my evolution has been very personal, but I do believe in strategy, but I am much more of a marketer who believes that you employ a strategy to expand your message and who you are and what your values are and what you stand for and all those things. And your strategy should never be something that impedes your mission. So if that makes sense, totally. I lead much more by like, what do you want to be? I was just on a coaching session this morning with somebody who has this bomb idea. And she was like, but it doesn't really fit my funnel. And I'm like, fuck your funnel. Okay.
Fuck your funnel.
Like the only thing that, yeah, fuck your funnel. And I love me a good funnel.
Me too, but I agree with you.
What I'm saying is like the fact that sets your body on fire tells me that is going to make you so much money. And we can create a funnel around that, not trying to fit you, and I could go on and on about this forever because I tend to work with really high earners who have lost themselves in sales strategy. They've lost their magic.
And it's so interesting because it becomes this like conformist. It's what I find fascinating is so what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say basically is, look, like the people that you're working with, in order to get to that place of high earning, you have to be open, you have to learn, you have to, get a lay of the land. What are the best practices? But there becomes this thing, like you were talking about that transition from using Martha's techniques, standing on her shoulders, to finding your own voice, creating your own tools, contributing to the industry in your unique way. It's so sometimes that transition doesn't happen. And that's where, you know what I mean? It's that place where you get to choose. Is this going to be you and a reflection of who you are? Are you going to make this contribution, or are you going to stay in a place of apprenticeship?
Right.
You know what I mean? And that is like, yeah, I've got a question for you, because one of the things, anybody who pays attention to you and your work, it's just like energy, very high energy. There's a lot of sass and boldness. And one of the questions that I've been so curious about is, do you have bad days? Do you get tired? Like, do you bring it? Like, are you real? No, just kidding. But how do you temper showing up for your peeps, which you do, you know what I mean? Consistently with life. Yeah.
Well, like, hey, 2020, COVID and the election and RBG. And in fact, I had a terrible day Monday. I have life happen. I have a 22-year-old that I refer to a lot as Ferris Bueller. and Ryan, and my daughter Cora, who's 20. And there are things that happen that never make the interwebs because their story is their story, even though I'm a big part of it. And I have had days where I'm like, okay, like there's a choice here. You can either show up or like be in a hovel, and there's no judgment either way. I think there are some days when you have to say, not today, mofos, I'm clearing my schedule.
That's it.
That's that, like uncle. But typically, luckily for me, being in this work heals me. And so if I'm having a terrible day, if I just get started with my clients and with teaching and with being someone like you on this podcast, it's such a mood boost for me. And movement is a huge part of it for me. I posted this morning that, hello, Peloton is now in partnership with Beyonce. I don't know if you know that.
Yes. Denise on my team told me yesterday. I was like, what?
What? And so I did the new Beyonce ride this morning, and I'm just like sweating and crying on those handlebars. And by the time I got off, I'm like, okay, so I have intense emotion, and the shit hit the fan. And I am devoted, though, to doing the things that I know that are going to help me process that emotion, whether that's therapy, movement, high quality food and thought, and journaling and all those things. But I will say most of the time, I am very high energy also because of those things, as I get good sleep. I take really great care of the things that I know power me up.
One of the things that I have found interesting about your business is that you continue to do one-on-one coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so many coaches, after they make it to a certain level, it's like they don't do one-on-one coaching anymore, which I've always found curious.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a rule.
Right.
Right. Why do you continue with one-on-one?
I love it. I have limited it.
Yeah.
But what I have always thought, I'm a coach. Like, I'm a coach's coach. I love coaching. So that's number one. Number two, I feel that it helps every other facet of my business to do some one-on-one, because it helps me keep the pulse on what is it really that's going on with people right now. So it informs my podcast episodes, my Go Time TV episodes, my social media posts. It's field work. Yeah. And I just love it. I love my clients.
It's so juicy, like the internal lives of women.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there anything more riveting or fascinating? I mean, I don't think you only coach women, but primarily I'm pretty sure you do. And I mean, who is more fascinating than us?
Oh, I know. I mean, it's like, and to get paid to help a woman unlock her magic or line up with it, or what I get such delight from it, and entertainment too. I often I'm like, this like makes my day. Like,
it's true. Yes. Like, it is delightful. All right. So speaking of, I want to talk through, and I want to get to the certification in a moment here, but let's take a moment to go to talk about Bear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Bear is a coaching program. Mm-hmm. It's also a wonderful book. Mm-hmm. I think you had an event that was Bear.
Mm-hmm.
One of the foundational kind of principles in Bear is this idea of pleasure. And I can remember reading the book, and you're talking about how so often for women, for modern privileged women, we primarily get, you get to this place where you primarily get your pleasure from booze and food.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a little bit of retail in there. And I was like, it was like, oh my God, she called me by my name. At that point I was like, what? It was because it's so easy to get there. You're hustling, you're busy, and then you don't prioritize making pleasure a part of your life. I would just love for you to speak, because this emerged from your work as a weight loss coach.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you uncovered this and what you have how you incorporate this in your life?
Totally. So I always say pleasure saves lives, and that we're taught, whether it's for business or for body, that willpower, you just need more willpower. And I know I used to think that when I would, go to Weight Watchers and weigh in and, count my points and do all that stuff, I would be like, man, if I just had more willpower, I could accomplish this. And women do this in business as well. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure women have more willpower. I mean, think about everything we do in a day. We have so much willpower. We don't need more willpower. What I've noticed is that we're pleasure deprived. And the human body is wired for pleasure, head to toe. And we tend to deny ourselves pleasure for a multitude of reasons. A lot of it is our particular culture's training that, you work then play. You have dessert after you eat, like everything. You travel when you retire, you have fun later. It's just not prioritized, particularly for women who have an invisible workload and extra part-time jobs that nobody talks about. And so what we find ourselves doing is consuming, thinking we're treating ourselves to pleasure by consuming things. Like you said, booze, food, buying clothes and shoes and bags, which I love all those things.
Right.
But real pleasure is allowing the body that is wired from head to toe to experience pleasure all the time. So whether it's spiritually or intellectually or aesthetically, like beauty. And by beauty, I mean art and flowers and beautiful things. Certainly delicious food is part of it. Certainly, the other thing that I joke about that we consume and are like, I treat myself well, is massage, mani-pedis, like all these things we're paying for.
Yes.
But pleasure could be, earlier just petting my dog, sitting in the sun for 5 minutes in between sessions, allowing yourself to have the nice pen, putting on body oil. Like there are so many things that we can do that really don't cost a lot or are free, that allow the body. What happens is then the body regulates. And everything that women think they're going to get from a diet, they actually get from pleasure, because it helps balance hormones, metabolism, all those things. And you don't have to earn it. You deserve to experience pleasure on a daily basis consistently, just because you exist, because your body came wired for it.
Well, and I think that idea, you don't have to earn it, is really powerful, especially for high achievers who have excelled in delaying gratification, consistently until it's not, I don't even know that you're supposed to delay it, but you're certainly not supposed to forget about it. So I find that fascinating. Can you share one of your sort of top simple ways? Like if you were to add pleasure to your day, what are a couple of things that are your top favorites?
So one that's one of my absolute favorites is, you could call it a joy corner, or you could call it a hygge corner, Hygge, hygge, which is a Danish word for cozy. High achieving women tend to have like beautiful homes, but not a dedicated space for themselves. Now you may say, oh, I have a nice bedroom. I have this beautiful walk-in closet. Okay, but do you have a dedicated space with all your favorite things? So I have this little corner, or it's not little, but I have a beautiful chair next to my fireplace where like my favorite books are there, a cashmere blanket, a beautiful candle, flowers. Like I surround myself in that joy corner with everything that I want. And when I get up early, that's where I sit and plan and ponder and experience. And in fact, in a lot of my free challenges, that's the first thing that I have women do is like in, the next day, like just assemble all your favorite things and carve out this one space in your home for yourself. And when women post pictures of that, as part of the challenge, they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't even believe I never thought of this. So it's having a dedicated space just for you, that's beautiful, where you can sit and experience aloneness.
What?
Yeah, I know. What? That's number one. I would say another top pleasure would be something simple like I like having things that could be a talisman, like that you could hold. So whether that's, I have a cloth napkin story where I'm obsessed with it. It's environmentally friendly, number one. Number two, it's a symbol of, I'm a woman who takes exceptional care of herself. I'm actually going to slow down enough to have a cloth napkin with what I'm eating and treat myself to something that is delicious to hold and use. And I have a story in the book about a client who lost, I can't remember how much it was now. Maybe it was 50 pounds. It might have been more than that. By just pulling out a cloth napkin with her meals, it slowed her down enough to like savor.
I remember that. And you can feel the luxuriousness in that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're wrapping up here. So tell us about the certification and what prompted, what was it that you were like, look, I need to share this particular philosophy with respect to coaching, tell us a little bit about the certification, where that came from.
Yeah. So I have been certifying coaches in the BEAR methodology for 5 years now, but I just launched the University for Life Coach training. And I launched it because what I noticed this year was, with everything that was happening in the social justice realm, I started a constant irritation that I've had over the years is that the coaching industry is very white. It is particularly male. But even among white women, it can be very love and light and no regard to Black, Indigenous, people of color, the LGBTQIA plus community. And when many Black men were killed this year and Black Lives Matter surfaced in a big way, and people were looking to their leaders to stand up and say something, there were many leaders within the coaching industry who refused to address it. And I thought, you know what? I guess it's going to be me. And so now there were plenty of life coaches addressing it. Plenty of people who were like, hey, don't you have something to say about this? Yeah. And so I decided, if we're going to change our industry, we need to change the way that we train coaches, because the circumstances and issues that, say, a Black queer woman faces are very different than the issues that I face as a white woman, heterosexual, living in Indiana, right? And so I've put together a faculty and curriculum specialists who have baked into the curriculum training for coaches on diversity, inclusion, and equity. And I feel very strongly that this is going to improve coaching standards, coaching tools, the way that we can heal the world so differently and like together and stronger and better. And so we have had our heads down, really refining this curriculum to something I'm really, really proud of. Fresh tools, fresh training, stellar faculty. I think it's going to like knock the socks off.
It's so exciting. It's super exciting. So here's a final sort of wrap up question for you around this. Like, when as a student of your work and your career trajectory, one of the things that I've noticed, is just, a huge body of work, right? Massive amounts of contribution and creation. How do you how far out do you plan?
Oh my gosh.
I'm with that, right? Because I don't love, some sort of planning, but tell us a little bit about how does that work?
Yeah, I am a big planner, and I find that planning and batching allows me to be super spontaneous. So, and that's what I try to teach, that it's not, this structure isn't to fence you in and confine you. It actually can set you free. And so every single Monday is what I would call creation day for me. And it's mostly quiet work. Occasionally an appointment will slip in there, but it's mostly the whole day is me batching blog post ideas, podcast ideas, Go Time TV scripts. And there's usually a process of me capturing, like, even while you were interviewing me, I was taking notes of stuff that I said differently than I've said before. Like, oh, I should write a blog about that. Right. So I'm constantly in my notebook or texting myself concepts every single day. And then I review them on a Monday. and they kind of go through this pipeline of creation. And I may bring other people in, like Alex Franzen, who's my head copywriter, or Mallory on my team who does my social media. Like I just went into Slack and said to my team, don't let me forget. I did this thing in Go Time TV called Funeral for Your Excuses, where I like wore a veil and burned people's excuses in my fire pit. And I'm like,
so extra.
So extra. My veil was so hilarious. Anyway, I'm like, anything for a prop. But I was like, I want to do Funeral for Excuses every Monday inside the mastermind. Don't let me forget. And then they're like, oh, and they're like creating images for it and like putting it on the schedule. And so I now have a lot of help. That massive content you see, there's a whole team behind it now.
Yeah.
So that I can just say something and they run with it. But a lot of it that takes like much more time. I'm probably 6 podcasts ahead.
Yeah.
4 to 6 Go Time TV scripts ahead, that sort of thing. But there are times when I'm like, uh-oh, I like, uh-oh, what happened?
Oh, yeah.
But we overall have a content plan going into the year, and then we fill in as we go.
Nice. Fascinating. Well, listen, for my listeners who have fallen in love with you and your work and the sassy attitude and the boldness and the opinions, what's the best place to go for them to kind of follow you and the work that you're doing?
Oh, thank you so much. So my website, which is newly designed, I'm so proud of it, is shyatt.com. And then I am on Instagram quite a bit at Susan Hyatt. You could also listen to the Rich Coach Club podcast or watch Go Time TV on YouTube.
Love it. Susan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, totally my pleasure.
If you love this show, then you will love even more my missives, i.e. my emails. If you're not on my email list yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up at eleanorbeaton.com/join. Now, when you go and sign up for my email list, you will quickly discover why some of the most popular, well-known, and influential voices in the world of women's entrepreneurship quietly, studiously, consistently open every single email I send out, because they want to be inspired, they want to be entertained, and also I think they really want to connect with a woman like myself who's in full command of her voice and is willing to open up and share her thinking, her ideas, and her story. I promise you that on this email list, you are going to be entertained. You are going to hear really valuable tips about stepping into your power as a leader. And you're also going to get fun insight that I do not share anywhere else. Go to eleanorbeaton.com/join. And I promise you, it will be the highlight of your inbox.